Okay, folks, happy Tuesday. All right, so already yawning. All right, so we've got this Panzer one that we're working on, and this Italian tank that we're working on at the same time. Oh, let me change the chat to live chat, and let me sign in as incognito so I can make sure that I don't get disconnected. I wouldn't be aware of it. Although the internet has not been misbehaving, we had a really rare problems, but for the most part, it works pretty darn well. There's so many things that I have to turn on and add this and okay. And the commercial that I didn't pick. Okay. Anyhow, so that's what we're going to be working on this Panzer 1 and this M1139 Italian tank. Oh, this is some really nice castings here. Castings, print, whatever. Looks really good. Both of them, actually. So there's a couple things I need to paint on here and that need to dry on the Panzer 1. There's sub-assemblies and things like that. We're going to go ahead and prime those things by hand, and while they're drying, we'll mess with it, and we'll work on these back and forth. So trying to minimize how much idle time we've got going on. Okay, so we've got these little canisters and the chair that need to go on there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a few pennies and some stickum. And that way I can paint around them. And I could have glued them in place. I could have glued them in place and then painted around them, but it makes it easier. It makes it more difficult because you got to do more steps, but it makes it easier because you don't have stuff in your way. How many things do I have? 4? A chair and 3 things. Yeah, 4. Okay. We're not gonna, if I had more confidence, then I'd probably use Elmer's. I don't want to use super glue because it's a little bit overkill. So we're just gonna use this stickum stuff, as I like to call it, white tack, and just really small dots of this stuff. These things don't weigh anything, so there's no reason really to weigh it down with something, holding it down with any kind of superhuman strength or anything like that. See if we can keep it under the edges so it doesn't squish out the sides. So we'll be able to paint all of it. These are basically the little ammo boxes that are on this model. But that is a very cramped cargo compartment if you're going to paint it. And I'm going to leave the inside of it gray. I know the inside of German vehicles are sometimes like this, almost like a ivory color. And I'm going to leave them as gray because it looks better. I've only seen one color picture of it, and it was a reenactment vehicle. Like it was a refurb. So, you know, I don't know if that's accurate, but and it showed everything on the inside from basically the visors down was like painted white. It just doesn't look right to my eye. So, if you like it that way, well, feel free to paint yours that way. All right. We had the opportunity to start a little earlier to kind of minimize the chances of me petering out. But a lot of that will happen on how excited you guys are to bring up stuff on the show. All right, we're going to... This is just Vallejo primer. It's the same stuff I spray, so I'm going to hand paint it. So it's going to take a little bit to dry. That's what we're going to switch to the Italian tank when it's time to do that. So I was talking about this scenario that I want to do with this Panzerjäger 1. Basically a showdown between the Panzerjäger 1 and a BT-7. Then I found, was it online? I guess it was online. Literally one-on-one. So I'm going to have an opportunity, I think, to be able to do that soon. Relatively soon. If everything goes according to plan. Any sign of the Fuhrer so far tonight? No. You know, like I told him, I said, you know, if you're going to pretend to be somebody else, pretend to be somebody better than yourself, right? I don't know who this guy is, but I'm going to put my money that he's a better individual than Adolf Hitler. I'm going to err on that side. But everybody knew what was going on. Nobody egged them on. This isn't the channel for that, you know? I don't egg people on channels. I don't go and create controversy, so I really don't need any of that stuff here. This is not we're not interested in that. I got one guy that I know in real life. I know this person. I usually see him at least once a year, maybe twice a year, depending if he goes to both conventions. And he has so many Facebook friends, and every time he posts something, and he does post some controversial stuff. He posts some things that are talking points of one particular party, okay? And as soon as he posts that stuff on there, he has, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 guys that are always attacking him for it. I'm like, I would either not post that stuff or unfriend those people, you know, but constantly fighting that all day long, like, he says he likes to argue. Okay, well, you're not convincing anybody of that, you know. arguing with people is like digging a hole and then filling it back up in the same place, then digging another hole in the same place where you dug it. Like that's a waste of time. Oh, we have a comrade. We got this guy. We can go ahead and black base him. Yeah, this is the don't accept flowers from a communist guy. So Rick, tell me what's going on. So you go to that thing. You go to this LAN party, right? Which is, I don't have a problem with it. I mean, you can do whatever you want, but I'm just saying, why are you playing a game that's 20 years old at a LAN party? And I played Rainbow Six Vegas. There's nothing wrong with it, other than I think in that one you can't like you're right on somebody and you can't like hit them with a butt of your rifle or something. I always thought that was annoying. The most annoying game, I don't mind games where you have to be quiet, but a game where you make a noise and all of a sudden you got to replay the scenario is not for me. And there was this I can never remember Splinter Cell. Splinter Cell, you play this guy who's deep undercover. I don't know whether he's a SEAL member or something like that, but he's basically somebody who's definitely behind enemy lines, right? And you've got, I forget exactly what kind of equipment you have, but you have a lack of equipment. Like if you're going to send me behind enemy lines, I'm going to ask for more stuff than that. I mean, he's got like a couple of like electronic gizmos, and he's got a pistol. He's got a Beretta with one magazine. That's like talk about skimping on that, and that's fine. But you go when you take somebody out, and you can't use their weapon or anything. Even if it's like, all right, well, what if I like knock somebody out that also uses 9mm by 19? No, you can't get more ammo. It's like, it's not my kind of game. Exactly why I avoid topics I know is going to stir something up, at least most of the time. I typically just bring whatever I'm into at a time. Rainbow Six Vegas 2 is your favorite first-person shooter of all time. It has been 10 years since I had a working PS3 to play it. You finally picked up a refurbished PS3 last week, and even though I had other games to play on it, I ended up playing that game the whole time. PS3, that's the Xbox 360 equivalent, right? Yeah, I think so. It throws me off because PlayStation's one up on the naming on the Xbox. Because when I got my first console, is because I didn't have a computer that wanted to keep up, and well, you could rent them at Blockbuster, right? So I go to Blockbuster and I rented a PS2, and I rented the original Xbox, and with some games, and the Xbox won out. They just have games that I prefer. That's all. The big controller is kind of weird, but honestly, the PS2 controller is kind of small. I used to be huge into Sony stuff, and I'm like, oh, if I got something, I had to get it at Sony, and it just kind of, I don't know, they just kind of annoyed me after a while. I don't know, that they have all this proprietary this and proprietary that, and So I never did. I never had a PlayStation. I never even heard about the PlayStation 1. Like, by the time I heard about PlayStation, it was PlayStation 2. The console that was really good way back in the day. Well, I don't mean way back in the day, because way back in the day could be, Atari 2600 that we'd go to Sears and play them. Like, I didn't have one, but you'd go when as a kid, Sears would have all these things set up. They'd have the 2600, the 5200, and television, and television, right? That's the one. Yeah, they had one that was like a disc to control it, and they had like this sea battle game I wanted to play. I didn't give a shit about none of the other games. I just wanted to play that one. But anyways, no, way back in the day, I'm talking about the late '80s, early '90s. Was oh man, what was the name of that game? Sega Genesis. When Sega Genesis came out, Sega Genesis blew everything away. before up to that point. And it had good games. They had one of my favorite games of all time. And I'm not a huge console person. You know, I certainly don't like games that involve a lot of jumping and shit. Like, oh, you fell in there. Oh, you got to replay the whole damn thing again. And it's like hop, hop, hop. That's like stress-inducing shit. Or a game where it's like, all right, let me take a break. You can't. They're chasing you constantly. I'm like, wait a second, hold on. I get paid for less stress than this shit. But this one of my favorite games of all time. I don't know if I played it, I'd probably suck. But we had a lot of time playing it in college. Is called Star Control, and it's basically this duel between spaceships of different types. And the campaign game was really cool because you're like in Star. I don't know. It's so difficult to explain if you haven't played it. But if you've played it, it's a freaking great game. I got fond memories of that game. So you have to build different spaceships. You can only use one of them at a time, but I don't really like. I'm not really a space person, but I have played space stuff that I've enjoyed. That was one of them. The other one was whatever version of that Star Trek game, and I'm definitely not a Star Trek person. Sorry to disappoint all of you. I didn't grow up watching it or whatever. Just their uniforms are dorky. Like, I mean, if you're gonna be all nerd and stuff, like at least get nerds that are better dressed. And yeah, there was this computer game. I forget what it's called, but Empires at War or something like that, where it was almost like a naval simulator game with the ships, and I enjoyed that a lot actually. Um, that was a pretty cool game. It was always a little glitchy, you know. Always a little glitchy. With computer games, there's some you encounter that have never run right. I don't care what specs you have; they just don't work well. You know, I remember when I had a friend of mine who had a computer before I had one, and I would like sometimes I'd go and buy a game, and I'm like, hey, let's try this game, and like it wouldn't work well. This one tank simulator called Across the Rhine never worked well, just never worked well. And then when I got a computer, I'm like, oh, let me get Panzer Elite. Panzer Elite never worked well. If you're gonna be a nerd, you have any outfit you can imagine at your disposal. Why settle for that? Exactly. Yeah, it's like they don't even fit right. Like they're like constantly pulling it down, and they're like not overweight, and they're constantly pulling their shirt down. Like, come on, man. You could do better than that. And Star Trek is just too friendly to aliens. They're too like, oh, well, we're just gonna hold hands and sing kumbaya kind of thing. And I'm more of a like, let's kill them. Why? They're not humans. Like, I don't know. I'm a human supremacist. I've said it before. Humans first. So these are drying. Let's get the I-type vehicle going. So all we've done is the base color, which is green ochre. This is what the gods at Vallejo decided to say. When you buy that paint set, this is what you should use. So I use that. And the camouflage is done in German uniform. Or German field gray. So it's gray with just a little bit of green tint to it. And that's all we did. Is we airbrushed them both, and then we put the strong tone wash on it. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to lightly dry brush the main color back on. Okay? This is how I do it. Your results may vary. And I'm really enjoying using the paper towel as opposed to destroying my cardboard. Because, I'm running out of cardboard. So I'm reading this book right now on Audible, and it's called Spearhead. And I didn't even know what it was. I read a little excerpt of it on on like the back of the dust cover, but I got it on Audible. I hadn't gotten an Audible yet, but I came across the book and I was just kind of flipping around, and it looked like it was a. I couldn't tell whether it was historical or not, but apparently it is, and it's the. It's got several characters in it, but one of the main characters is the gunner, that ends up being one of the guys that got involved in the first shootout that the Pershing did, the U.S. heavy tank in February 1945, which I didn't know. I don't know anything about. That's just like always been too late in the war for me. We're going to go really, really light on this. And and I'm going through it. I guess I'm more than halfway through the book, and oh, I don't know how to say that. Well, can I try? Well, there's not enough vowels there. Presing. No, I'm not going to try it. I'm sorry. There's not enough vowels for me. This is an Italian tank. It's an M1139. But one of the situations that happens, I don't know anything about. I consider myself a World War II nut, but there's all kinds of stuff that I just don't know anything about, which is kind of cool because it's not like I'm done learning about stuff. But there was this one. I just read about this one situation. It's called the Wellborn Massacre, and apparently, when they're trying to encircle the Ruhr, the Third U.S. Armored Division, which is the unit that all these guys are attached to, ends up trying to encircle the Ruhr, which is the heartland of production there for Germany in early 1945. And one of their lead columns ends up getting ambushed. And I actually didn't know anything about that. I mean, so this is like, a month before the war is over. And they do this ambush where they end up killing like the commander of the armored division. Like, I didn't even know that. Like, I'm reading this, I'm like, I'd heard of this guy. I just didn't realize that that's the battle that he died in. I mean, it's pretty unusual for that to have happened. And he turned out to be the highest ranking U.S. officer in Europe in the Second World War to have ever been killed. And I'm like, how did I not know about this? But it is kind of late in the war, so it's not really my area of experience. But it's kind of a good book. But there's some books that you don't mind having in physical form. This is not one of them because I don't think this is one I'm going to read over and over again. This is kind of a good one-off, but I do have from reading it some good ideas to, if I ever get a Pershing, what to use them as. So, yeah, so we're just going really light. We're just trying to bring it up a little bit, Is this the Italian tank? Yes, this is the one Italian tank so far. And it's not a very good tank. But that's okay, as long as it's not fighting very good tanks either. That's okay. You encounter a Matilda, you're toast. Even though the Matildas might even be smaller. They're about the same size. And don't judge how bright this thing is. It won't look that bright when we're done with it. Yeah, I like how that is looking right there. So if we just have everything have the same amount of brightness as that, we'll be really happy with it. And this is also a good way to soften the edges on a camouflage pattern. So if you don't have an airbrush and you want to paint some kind of a airbrush-ish looking camouflage, just paint it with hard edges and then just come in with this and then dry brush over it. Of course, you got to go really light. Don't try to knock the whole thing out in one go, That's the mistake that a lot of people make. I don't know if it's a mistake, but if they're like not happy with how it turns out, well, that's the culprit of a lot of that. Is trying to do a 4-step process and knock it down to 1 step. You know, if you see stuff online that's done by these really pro people, they don't cut corners. They didn't cut corners and do work like that. You know. Now this I got to be careful with because this hatch is glued with super glue, which I don't have a lot of confidence in. It's brittle. Let's get some more of that. Green ochre. It's 1/72. I only do 1/72. This is actually from a printer that prints in 1/56. Yeah, I don't do 1/56. I don't do 28 millimeter. If somebody held a gun to my head and said, "Hey, you can't do 1/72 anymore. It's upsetting people," I would do 15 millimeter. I'm not a 28 millimeter guy. That just isn't. I'm just not going to go there. I don't really care for them. So yeah, some of them look okay, but I don't really care for them. And they don't need me to care for them. There's enough fanboys of that scale. They don't need me. Let's go over this, but really gentle. Yeah, I do all 1/72 and 1/76. I prefer 1/72. It's just more in line with the look at the figures. All right, let's see how we did here. That looks pretty good. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to lighten this up. So what are we going to lighten this up with? Well, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to dissect, because I don't remember anymore, what colors I use in the basing for the desert. I want to say it's buff. Of course, it may end up actually being dark sand. I'm going to pull this out here. I'm going to show you this A13 that I have. So what we'd like to do is we'd like to dry brush the colors that are that are going to be in the basing. And I don't remember what colors those are, but I have it written down somewhere. It's just a matter of finding out where it's written down. And it should be right here. Okay, other bases, African bases, no. Step Byzantine. I believe it's the Byzantine one that I use. English uniform, green ochre, which is this color here, and dark sand. So there's no point in putting more. There's no point in putting more dark sand on here. No green ochre on here. We're going to put dark sand, which is my lightener for just about everybody. So let's get dark sand out here. And again, we're going to go really gentle with this. Even gentler. And that's probably a really close color to this. Yep. This is a beautiful model. It's kind of an unattractive vehicle, but that's, well, better looking than a Semovente. I think the Semoventes are, I need to think about those because I always bring up like, what's the ugliest World War II vehicle? And most World War II vehicles aren't unattractive. They always have something to them. A Semovente is an ugly vehicle. It really is. And I don't think about them, but really kind of an ugly vehicle. Now, I'm actually not going to go over the whole thing because otherwise this camouflage pattern will end up disappearing. So we're going to do the turret. Likewise, this isn't weathering. This is just the modulation or whatever of the base color of this. Okay, that looks pretty good. We're going to rinse this. We're going to have a sip. How is this looking? Is it still too wet? Or can we paint over it? I think it's going to be still too wet. The process that I do to paint these, I think is really pretty simple. It just has a lot of steps. It could have even more steps, but at some point you're like, okay, that's good enough. But yeah, that actually looks pretty good. And we're going to do some lighter highlights on it as well. Anyhow, I think I'm going to give these guys the gray base coat that they need to have because then that's going to dry. So we're going to use let's see how close the German gray is. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to cheat a little bit. Because I hate brush painting this stuff. This is great paint, but I don't like brush painting it. I like brush painting Vallejo. Airbrushing it, not so much. So we're going to put this on here, which this is really the color that I want, but this is going to be really watery, and I'm going to mix the two. And this is going to take a little bit of time to dry, so that's why I said work on something else in the meanwhile. You okay over there? And the seat, not going to be dark gray, but the metal part will be. Oh. Do you use airbrush to paint the basic color? Yes. I have a couple of CV33s from S model and only brush painted them in one color. So the only reason I used an airbrush is for quickness. I'm used to hand painting everything. And I'm a lot better of a hand painter than an airbrush. I'm improving with the airbrush, but I got a long way to go. Maybe if I airbrush another 120 years, I might be equivalent. But I'm a brush paint person. You know, I basically just need to use the airbrush to get away from using rattle cans, and I would only use rattle cans on the base color, not the base color, the primer and the sealer at the end. That's the only thing I needed the rattle cans for, not to paint the thing overall. Because what I would normally do is I'd paint the whole thing black, you know, as primer, and I would come in with whatever color, like whether it's this one, and come in and I'd dry brush this. Now I'm like, well, I'll go ahead and paint it, but I'll add some extra shading in there with the airbrush. But I like the hand painting because I can do it wherever I want. I don't have to be in the garage, or I can be relatively comfortable here and do that. So we're going to let this dry, and then we'll come in and we'll lighten up that shade a little bit. So this is this Ammo MIG base gray base with a little bit of a dry brush of the Luftwaffe uniform to add a little bit of a blue tint to it. It's very, very subtle, but it does make a difference. I happen to like that it has a little bit of a blue tint in it without going and buying a filter. And, you know, I don't have a problem with using the filters. I do have a problem with, okay, we're going to put a filter now. All right, let me gloss coat the entire vehicle. Like, I don't want to do that, you know? I mean, if I'm putting decals on, and this will have decals, I want to just put gloss over the little areas where the decal is going to be. I don't mind sealing the whole vehicle, but I want to do it when it's just flat coat. So, all right, while that's drying, while those guys are drying, let's come over here and paint the tracks and the road wheels. All right, so we're going to remove this, and let's get a brush that we can have complete confidence in. I don't want to use a super tiny one because I like saving those things for faces and stuff like that. They do tear up over time, so. All right, and I guess I could do the road wheels on the pins. I'm really, really tired. I'm really, 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 really tired. So, but I really want to get these guys done because I got a scenario they can be in, so we can test out the weapons. See how the weapons and the vehicles work in the game, in the framework of the game. How do you pronounce that? I have no idea how to pronounce that. All right, let me see. I bet there's a way to pronounce that online. Let's see. PR. Don't tell me. See, I do. Good, I do. I speak two languages, and I have a clue, so I'm going to do better than most of you. Prisgrim pronunciation. How to pronounce? Yeah,
Przegryw. Przegryw.
Pregarith. Pregarith. Wow, there's no. What's it mean? Yeah, I'm probably going to get the S model CV33s and the 20 millimeter one. I need a 20 millimeter one, a two pack of the little guys, a flamethrower one, and probably three more of these. And you know which vehicle always looks really weird for the Italians? That Sahariana car, because it looks like it's really bulky and has really big wheels, and the people are really small. They're like trying to drive like it just looks always weird, you know. I don't know what it is about it. It's just the proportions of it is, and I think it wasn't a bad vehicle. Loser in Polish, loser entertainment. Okay, well, welcome. Are you in Poland? Yeah, I would do Polish vehicles, but I'm doing Poland in 39. You know, I'm not opposed to them being, to using allied equipment, right? As a matter of fact, the Spitfire with the little Purina sign, I know it's not like Purina, but the little red and white, shit. I got a pull here. Oh no, they're all the way up here. I got some Polish Knights that I really like. But anyhow, the the problem is if you're going to do Polish troops in like 44, they basically have the same as British kit with British tanks. So if I'm gonna do Poles, I'd do them 39. You know, and I'm not doing Soviet vehicles in Polish service. Sorry, I'm not doing that. You're not going to liberate Poland and do that to them. I don't. There's either Soviets. That's it. I don't have anybody. Pretending to be helpful to the Soviets, and then and then they take over and like jokes on you, comrade. You're a slave now. Nah, that doesn't sit well with me. But I would do Poles in 39. Hell, it lasted longer than the battle for France. I just don't the German vehicles. I wouldn't put white crosses on them. I'd use ones that would be able to go into France also, and then just paint them with the black in the middle. It just looks weird that they did that kind of stuff. Yep, I'm Pacific time. No, I'm Eastern. I'm Eastern, so it is quarter to 8 p.m. here. Let me go grab a soda. Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about Polish stuff, my experience with it. I remember, and I forget this because this was so many years ago, it was almost like a different life. When I did 135th scale modeling, I was always looking to get unusual stuff to build that most people hadn't built. You know, I mean, I love Tamiya, but Tamiya didn't make some of these unusual things. So I remember getting a Russian manufacturer. Russia had just fallen or morphed into something else, and and the and there was Russian kits that were available, Russian manufactured kits that were available, and I had a T. I went and got a T60, which I always thought a T60 was a cute little vehicle. Yeah, it's a piece of shit. That doesn't matter, you know. So I had one of those, and I built a 7TP. I built a Polish 7TP from a Polish company. I don't remember who it was, at 135th scale, early 90s. And the kit was kind of crude. You know, compared to me, it's kind of crude. I did 3-color camouflage on it. I remember that. I'd forgotten about that. But it's easier to do one-offs when you're doing, modeling because you're like, hey, here's this tank. And it doesn't have to go with anything, right? Instead of like, I'm going to build this Polish platoon, which, they make those, what's the First to Fight series? I really want to like their tanks, but man, there's something about things from Eastern Europe, and I'm sorry, I'm going to lump Poland in with Eastern Europe in this situation. But they give you these instructions, it's not enough pictures, and like all these arrows pointing at shit. And I'm a pretty experienced model builder, and I think First to Fight they're well made, but they're, I can see a few of those have been a first to flight. I'm sure people have thrown those models across the room. They just have a lot of little accoutrement to put on there. I've got to finish up my I have a command Panzer 38T with the antenna on the back. The big frame antenna on it. But I don't have any poles yet. I suspect I'll probably have poles at some point. And French. You know. But everybody likes the poles. Everybody likes to play the poles. Everybody I know. Mitch likes the poles. Randy's part Polish, he said. So, you know. The Woman Slayer. What's your body count today? It doesn't mean what it used to mean. It means I stacked them this high. It means the other thing now. Well, I'm not from this time period, so. You like that picture I did on the Italians? I came across that picture. I'm like, I gotta put this out there. And usually when I come up with funny stuff, I'm not the funniest person around, but I don't overthink stuff. Like I'll usually put like the very first thing that comes to mind. Yeah, First to Fight instructions. Yeah, they're really advanced. I mean, but they build okay models. I don't have one of them finished, but I do have one by this Russian manufacturer. I don't know who it is, but it was the same problem. And it's a beautiful model. It really is, but is it this one? Oh yeah, this guy. I want to say it's PST. But you get like all these freaking arrows that are going in different places. And this is a beautiful. Well, now I'm used to doing black lining, and like this fucker needs black lining. Well, we're gonna come back and black line this ISU 122. That's a really cool vehicle. And these two things need to be rusty. Oh, I don't mind doing a refurb, but all of these little like grab handles, they were all over the place, and they weren't countersunk. So I had to look at different. Whatever. It doesn't matter. These little like hooks that are here to hook. To go to the factory and lift this thing up to, if one of them actually made it back to the factory to get refurbed or something like that. there was no points. I had to go back and forth and look at photographic evidence. You know, at least we have the internet. At least we have the internet where we can look at this from multiple angles. But this is actually a really good looking kit when it's done. I want to say it's PST, but I got it a long time ago. But this thing's due for a refurb. I haven't even played with it. No, I could just, you know, that's just it. This is the same thing that I do now. I just decided to start doing the black lighting, and I like it better. Forcing those shadows exactly where I want them. So, again, those Polish Shermans, they have the big writing on the side of them. And with Polish names, with really, really big block white handwriting. I just don't want to do their infantry in 44 because they look the same as British kit, you know? I heard a new cursed hobby technique using toilet wax. What the fuck is that? To secure tank turrets whilst allowing rotation. Nah, you don't need that. That was an ISU 122. PST is Belarusian short runs. I won't try them. PST, yeah, I got mine a long time ago. Okay, so we've got a couple tools back there. Let's get the black out. Did we already get the black out? We did. Okay, let's get a little bit of water. There was a company that was Polish called, and they might still be around, called Odzmial Ozmi, something like that. Odzmial Ozmi. And they came out with, they're the ones that came out with Pico armor, you know, the really cute 2 or 3 millimeter armor. And they also had some 15 millimeter figures, Germans from the Battle of Tannenberg, 1410, and the Lithuanian Poles also for that. And a buddy of mine a long time ago, this would have been 2008, something like that, we were going to do a DVA army. We were going to do double poles with Hungarian allies. Back when I thought there was actually a purpose to Big Battle DVA. But anyways, so we got these figures, and I've talked about them before. And they're really beautifully cast figures, these Odzmial Ozmi. I don't know if they're still in business. They've sold the molds, those molds now. I believe Fighting 15s has them now. And but I got them, and like they're beautiful figures, really well cast, but hard as nails. Literally hard as 16 penny nails. And I joked that, you know, they were you couldn't trim the flash off of them with an X-Acto knife because the metal was almost as strong as the X-Acto knife. And you know, it's like, hey, they melted down these Soviet era T-54s and 55s, and that's what they used as the stuff to make them. But it was really, really hard alloy. I ended up selling mine. So toilet wax is a wax ring they put between the pipe fixture and internals of their crapper, bog, whatever have bog. I'm gonna use the bog. I'm gonna go fill the bog up. I mean, PST, they look crude. I'm too bad a modeler for that kind of models. I tried Ace model once and I haven't completed it. I've heard horror stories about Ace. I've heard, and you know, I've got a couple of Rodins, and I think the Rodins are really challenging. I think that if you have a model that has a lot of small pieces on it, that has a lot of drawings with a ton of arrows, and then there's no locator marks, okay? If you don't have any locator marks, like you'll have a place like on a fender where this goes, but it just kind of points to the general area, and there's nothing where there's no little peg hole where it fits in there. I think that's a big challenge for new modelers, and there's nothing wrong with that. We've all been new modelers at some point, you know. But Yeah, they're not exactly user friendly, are they? I've heard horror stories about Ace about fit. Now the PST doesn't fit bad. First to fight fits great, so fit's not an issue. Rodin fit beautifully, you know. So um, gives new meaning to the bog monster. Man, what's that smell? It's the smell of a ripe bog. All right, so I take it all of you, or most of you, have seen my care package that I got. What are you the most excited about me painting out of that care package? And there's Marcus. Good thing we weren't saying anything bad about him. Yay, you caught a live session. What are you the most excited about me painting out of that? Honestly, I like them all. Oh, and Marcus, you weren't here earlier, but there's a chance that this weekend I'll be able to do this battle because somebody that I share the home with might not be around. Not that I couldn't do that with when she was here, but it's kind of annoying to have somebody take over your freaking main room and and film a live session. So Panzerjäger one should be done by then. Right now it's just drying the little sub assemblies. The Italians. Okay. They're up there. I really want to do the Japanese, but I know that I can't because it's going to lead to buying palm trees and I've got. Here's the thing about the desert. I've got two 4x6 cloth things or whatever those things are called for the desert that look nice. So we can do like a 4x8 foot table with the coverings that I've got. So I can certainly cover that out there. So you're in for the BT7 Panzer One scenario. Yeah, probably Saturday. That's what we're going to try to shoot for. I'm scared of doing vehicles, and if I can't do one vehicle versus one vehicle, I don't want to do it on a 2x4 foot table. I want at least like 7 feet that it's got to cross. So we'll probably play it a couple different times. Now, BT7 is 3-man crew, right? This is a 3-man crew. So these guys are going to have names because they're still characters, and they actually won't come out on the table unless something bad happens to them, right? So I've got 3 figures for the Soviets. I don't have 3 German tank crewmen that, if something happens to them. So we'll just use other figures because, like, basically, when they come out on the field, the game's over. Going to be really simple objectives. The BT-7 has to try to keep moving. It can fire, but it can't stop the fire, and it wants to ram this vehicle. So we'll run it once, like basically out in the open, and probably run it, unless it sucks, and then probably run one again where it doesn't have a good line of fire. At some point, this thing's going to have to reposition itself, even if it's moving a short distance. So that's what I can foresee doing. But anyway, so we're going to have these characters that there's not going to be a figure with them with a name on them. So what am I going to do to come up with names for them? I'm probably going to fire up Armored Commander and start a career with each one of the 2 vehicles and get some of the names from them. That's what we're going to call the guys. Okay? I think. So. I recommend IBG models. I think they have released M13 recently. Assembled a couple Japanese models from IBG. They are great. Some of the IBG stuff, they make some Panzer 4. I think they make a Panzer 4D and a Panzer 4E, but I heard they're 176 scale. Even though they say they're 172nd, and the only reason I found that out is because of 172nd on the way. That's a that's a site that has a lot of like reviews of things like that, and they're relatively affordable. There's another name that they go by also, um, and I'll tell you what they are. That's really the only reason I didn't get them is they were 176th. So I decided to make my Panzer fours, which Marcus says are his favorite. We're gonna have to refurb them, by black lining. But I built a Panzer four D for Tamiya and early on, and I liked it. Um, 172nd on the way. Great site. Oh, I typed 162nd on the way. 172nd on the way. On the way homepage. All right, so if you go down here to kits and previews and go all the way to the end, they're also known as, they have a very long name. It's called The World at War. Though if you click on The World at War, these are actually manufactured by IBG. And in that World of War set, they make a Panzer IIIA, that's a Poland thing, a Poland 39. They make a Stug prototype, a Panzer IVA, a Panzer IIA, a Panzer IIIB, a Panzer IIB, lots of people make a 2B, a 4B, a 4D, a C, an A9, a British A9, a Mark I cruiser close support, and then two versions of an A10. So it all looks cool, except if you look at the preview, and there's a preview of let's see the preview of this A9. This is what it looks like. Now, Plastic Soldier Company makes an A9 as well. But if you look on here, it actually says... No, this one is 172nd. This one is 172nd. But I think the Panzer IVs are 176th. Oh yeah, here it is. Similar to the Panzer IVA, but this time labeled as 176th. Labeled as 172nd, but actually 176th. So that's kind of a shame. But I've got some 176 scale Panzer IVs, and they're okay. I mean, but if I'm gonna like go out and buy one, I want one to be in 172nd scale. It's kind of like when you go to somebody's house, right? If somebody invites you to eat at somebody's house, they provide you the food. At least this one, I'm not that picky of an eater. I'm like, I'll eat what you have there. But if I'm gonna go to a restaurant and you're gonna let me order whatever I want to, I'm gonna order my favorites. But I don't see any point in building a model like this. I see no point in building this as a model. This thing was like $10. Like, you can't get a model for $10. And I don't mind building models. Don't, because I do find it relaxing, but it just doesn't make sense to go and spend more money for a model. That will have worse detail, because this thing's amazing. It's just absolutely amazing. $10, $12, something like that. Some of the ones I got were 10, some of them were 12. Anyways. You need to cut that inflation and hold that inflation in place so it doesn't go up anymore. We got tanks to build. But there's a lot of stuff out there that are really discouraging to new modelers. I think Eschi are really discouraging to modelers. I think they're, as a kid, I had an Eschi kit of a Panther. I'm pretty sure it was an Eschi kit of a Panther, and it came in a plastic bag, and that bottom hole was 3 pieces, and I couldn't get any. I got it warped. I couldn't unwarp it. Now I could probably handle that stuff now because I've got access to glues that aren't going to stand up to that kind of nonsense. They're just going to laugh at that, be like, "You're not going to stay warped. We're going to put you in there," you know. But when you're 13 or 14 years old, that's like a problem. You know, you got a hull you can't even assemble. And I actually have a vehicle by Eschi that I haven't been able to build because the suspension's wrong. Like it won't go together. And I'm probably not going to mess with it now. You know, because at some point it's like, okay, is it really worth my time? Is it worth my time to spend, you know, 10 hours trying to get something to not look like shit when I paint it to fix it? I'm like, no, I just get one of these, you know? Now here's a question you'll know. Were all the Panzer Is pulled from frontline duty in North Africa by the time the M3... Okay, now here's a question you will know. Were all the Panzer Is pulled from frontline duty in North Africa by the time the M3 Honeys showed up? Well, you just want me to do a deep dive. Well, let's do it. So I found out I've only looked through very cursory look through these books that I just got recently. Okay? That doesn't mean I'm not going to. That just means I haven't had time really to look through them. And immediately, the best book I can recommend, and I haven't even looked through this thing in detail. The absolute best book I can recommend is this right here. If you're doing North Africa. This book is phenomenal. Phenomenal. It's easy to, it's explained well. It's got lots of pictures, diagrams, all kinds of stuff on here. And one of the things that I encountered, let's see if I can find it, because I literally just flipped it open this morning. Let me give myself a little bit of a height advantage, get a better line of sight on it. So here's my guess, okay? The Honeys didn't start appearing until after Battle Axe. I'm guessing. I could get shit wrong, okay? Battle Axe is in... Battle Axe is the first counteroffensive that the British did against the Germans in June of 41. I don't think Honeys were there yet. I think the Honeys didn't start appearing until maybe September 41. Before Crusader, but just before Crusader. Okay? At that point, if there was any Panzer Is that the Germans had, we're not going to call these Panzer Is. We're going to call those Panzerjäger ones. But actual Panzer Is, they would have been in the recon in the recon units of some of the companies and some of the light companies. And the 1941-42 German, especially early 42, German Panzer Division had 4 companies normally, and the first 3 were light/medium ones. The 4th one was always the one that had the Panzer IVs in it. And that's in one battalion. The other battalion would have been 5, 6, and 7 are the lightish ones. The 8th one is the one that has the Panzer IVs in it. And I came across something here. I need to put my glasses on so I can find it. About the difference between... I didn't read it really heavily, but I will now. And this super freaking easy to understand stuff in here, because I have this book on audio, and it doesn't have all of the diagrams and stuff in there, you know. But when the German divisions start arriving, and the difference between the 15th Panzer and the 21st, because the 21st is... let me find it, and then it's over in this area here. It talks about the Americans, which isn't really important at this part, because in this book there's really no Americans per se in it. Yeah, I've actually read this. I've read probably a third of this book on audio. But I liked audiobooks, but it's very hard to go back and like, where was it that I heard this again? it's easier to go back with this. And I'm really glad I got this because this is, okay, the opposing armored forces. We're probably in here. Britain's armored forces, right? German armored forces, okay. All right. This is talking about like when the Germans hit the Italians are like asking for help, and the Germans send them some stuff. But Hitler was unwilling to see his ally defeated in North Africa. Consequently, January 11th, 1941, he signed Fuhrer Directive 22, Operation Sunflower, which authorized the transfer of a defensive covering force to Libya. The OKH decided to create a hybrid division designated as the 5th Light Division. That was also always one of those things that was like, okay, what is the 5th Light Division, right? So hybrid division designated the 5th Light Division, rather than redirecting the entire 3rd Panzer Division in North Africa. Oberst Hans Freiherr von Funk's Panzer Regiment 5, with 2 battalions, so a standard panzer regiment with 2 battalions, was the primary combat element of the hybrid division. But 3rd Panzer Division also contributed its reconnaissance battalion, its anti-tank battalion, and 1 artillery battalion. The rest of the division was filled out with Heerstruppen, independent army-level battalions, including 2 motorized machine gun battalions, and Panzerjäger Battalion 605, which is the one that has the Panzerjäger 1s. Equipped with 27 Panzerjäger 1 tank destroyers. The 5th Light Division was a very... this is interesting how different they are. The 5th Light Division was a very unbalanced formation with emphasis on tanks and anti-tank weapons, but very little infantry or artillery. Although von Funk assembled the task force, General Major Johannes Streich was given command of the 5th Light Division on 7th of February 41. Streich is a very experienced armor officer, having led Panzer Regiment 15 in the Polish and French campaigns. In addition to the 5th Light Division, the OKH decided to form a 2nd Armored Unit to deploy to North Africa, using the 33rd Infantry Division as a base. By adding Panzer Regiment 8 from the 10th Panzer Division and a large amount of motorized transport, a mundane infantry formation was transformed, I didn't know that, into the 15th Panzer Division in just a few months. The 15th Panzer was a more balanced formation with 2 tank, 5 infantry, and 3 artillery battalions, plus normal allocations of engineers, reconnaissance, and anti-tank support troops. So basically, they both have the same amount of tank strength. It's just the 15th had more of the infantry and stuff to go with it. Now, I don't know if I can find it here, but what I've read in the past, the 5th had a lot more Panzer 1s in it. Okay. The first major German armored unit to reach North Africa was Oberst Herbert Ulrich's Panzer Regiment 5. Okay, so Panzer Regiment 5 is the 5th Light Division's meat. Okay? It had a total of 155 tanks, 25 Panzer 1s, 45 Panzer 2s, 61 Panzer 3s, 17 Panzer 4s, and 7 command tanks. Of course, you don't know what the command tanks are. I'm gonna assume that they'd had a dummy gun. They're probably a mixture of those 265s, which are those damn, I think they're 265s. They're basically like a Panzer 1 with a pulpit, right? And or Panzer 3s that had a dummy gun. Each Panzer battalion consisted of a headquarters company with 5 Panzer 2s, one Panzer III, and two command tanks, and two light companies, each with. Where the hell are the Panzer ones then? Your question was about Crusader, though. Yeah, they probably. Let me switch. It's going to be all the way to the back. And this has a ton of detail. Like these guys went around, there was three of these tanks, and they knocked out one, and one guy ran out of gas, and that kind of stuff. I mean, it's not like. Hold that thought. That's why we have these kind of books. I think I've seen I think I've seen that answer. Or I got a good guess. Let's look at in Panzertruppen, and here is Operation Sunflower. Okay, when did Crusader start? In November? While the Germans had prepared to attack the fortress Tobruk, the British had built up a major offensive. The British Operation Crusader came trundling across the border on 18th of November 1941. Panzer Regiment 8, that's 15th Panzer Division, prepared for the assault on Tobruk was overstrength, with 42 Panzer IIs, 44 Panzer IIIs, 21 Panzer IVs, 4 command tanks, 6 GR Panzer Befehlswagen. I don't know what the 4 light command tanks. Okay, so that would have been like those pulpit ones I was talking about, and 6 Grosse ones. So that would have been like the Panzer III ones, and 5 captured Matilda Mark II infantry tanks. Panzer Regiment 5, so that one's closer to the border, was at its alert position south of Gasser El Arid airfield with a total of 35 Panzer IIs, 68 Panzer IIIs, 17 Panzer IVs, and 4 heavy command tanks. So Panzer III command tanks. It doesn't even mention the Mark I's. The Panzer ones. I would suspect they probably don't have any. I suspect they don't have any. Let me go to the beginning where they land. If there's a notation like they have this many, but then they didn't have any after this such and such a date. Oh, here it is. Okay, this is talking about the average journey coming up from their start point. The British threw up a blocking force The Panzers pretty much pushed that away. This is right after they landed. Instead of being continuously delayed on roads in the mountains, Panzer Regiment 5, remember this is 5th Light Division, moved cross-country towards Malichi and Tobruk. The outcome was reported on the 5th of May 1941 by the Werkstatt Company of Panzer Regiment 5. The average journey of 700 kilometers in the desert had been a very adverse effect on the panzers. Up to the time that the regiment moved into position before Tobruk, the following panzers had been delivered to the two workshop companies because of severe motor and suspension damage. 12 out of 25 Panzer Is. So it mentions Panzer Is there. Oh, here it is. Here's the strength of the... Well, I think I read about that earlier. So 25 Panzer Is, 45 Panzer IIs, 71 Panzer IIIs, 20 Panzer IVs, and 7 command tanks in the 5th Light Division, Panzer Regiment 5. And the 15th doesn't have any Panzer Is listed. So if you have Panzer Is, they're going to be attached to the 5th Light Division, which ends up turning into the 25th at some point. I have a feeling, I don't know where that is. I would imagine it's probably mid-41. But this talks about like a lot of companies. Like for instance, you got stuff that's written in the stuff that's like, the heavy tank combat made it difficult to break contact because of their high speed. The staff company of fifth company and 3 panzers from the 6th company. Well, not what kind of numbers they have. Got 500 numbers or 600 numbers. Reached the border's fence south of Capuzzo. The order was not received due to failure of radio set, resulting in about 14 panzers of the 6th Company and 8th Company turning west. So that's 8th Company is Panzer IVs. Having lost radio contact with the battalion, under the command of Hauptmann Müller, they later moved back to Sidi Aziz. At 08:25 hours, the area in front of the border fence south of Capuzzo, a firefight again occurred between Mark II infantry tanks, that's Matildas, and the 12 panzers remaining in Panzerabteilung Hohmann. The Panzer II tanks pulled back, one Mark II remained stationary behind the border fence. Panzerabteilung Hohmann slowly moved back towards Capuzzo and encountered a truck-borne British infantry, which they forced to take cover by machine gun fire. At 8:40, I reported that Capuzzo had been occupied by the enemy and the panzers were out of ammunition. At 9:15, left with 10 operational panzers. I pulled back to resupply with ammunition about 5 to 6 kilometers north of Capuzzo. Yeah, there's like all kinds of freaking details, All kinds of stuff on there. So to answer your question, I don't think so. Well, let's see. Is there a Operational Panzers and Panzer Regiment 1, November 18th to 41, okay? So this is right before Crusader. When Crusader starts, Panzer Regiment 5, which is the meat and potatoes of 5th Light Division that we know where all the Panzer Is were at, okay? And none of them are listed here as far as write-offs. So either none of them broke down, or they weren't around, or they weren't worth commenting on. So I would say no. I would say that you can't use Panzer Is that late. And here in May 42, of course, none of them are listed. So, anyhow, is there an index at the back of that might help? Thanks for finding that info. That's the kind of info I like to... Oh, the index? What do we got here? Radio equipment, range. How many losses for command tanks? Inventory gains. Production. Panzer 38, Panzer 35s, inventory gains, Panzer 2s. Panzerkampfwagen 1, produced during the month, ready for issue during the month, losses during the month. Okay, well this is, of course, this is all fronts, so that's not necessarily useful. So the production starts in September 39. There was no Panzer 1s produced in 39, obviously. They're all like 33, 1935, 1936 kind of thing. Inventory first of the month in, what do we say, Operation Crusader? So that's November 41. There's 717, according to this, there's 717 Panzer Kampfwagen 1s. But that's everywhere. Anyhow, I like that kind of. I like looking up that kind of stuff. I like looking up. That's the kind of, trying to pull back the list. Because I'm like, okay, I want to do maybe some Panzer threes. What company should I pick? I'm not going to pick anything, but if the fifth and sixth one were in it all the time, use those numbers. I don't know. It just helps me make kind of a decision. I like the deep dives. All right, gang, got to go tonight. Look forward to later in the week. The AK DAC book says they were used for spares of the Panzerjägers. That would make total sense, but I wanted to double check in case I had an excuse to buy some LCTs, little crappy tanks. Did I show you mine? I don't know if I blacklined it or not. If I pin washed it. Nope. So that's apparently a regimental vehicle since I put an R on it. But it's gray, and then I dry brush desert colors on it. And that's how I'm gonna make, I think, my Panzers look. I'm gonna do early ones. Because I like the gray base. That forces you to have something really, really dark to build up off of. We gotta bring this one up to the same. We just have to put the black lining on it, that's all. Just make the difference is you can see the details like when you're 2 feet away. But it's kind of an ugly vehicle, to be honest with you. The Panzer 1's kind of an ugly vehicle. Panzer 2s look good. And probably, Panzer 2s are probably the only German tank that doesn't have a little turret basket in the back that looks okay. But, that's personal opinion, But, all right, we're getting too many fucking things out here. Typical. Bring them all out here. But I like those deep dives because I'm learning stuff too. I'm learning about that stuff. I'm interested in learning because at least you have an idea. Like I may not know the exact specifics, but I got a clue. So, but you got to keep looking stuff up to keep that clue fresh in your mind. You're absolutely right on that. You're absolutely right. Except they weren't honeys. Honeys are only the ones that with that style roof, and those only went to the desert. I'd put money they only went to the desert. They're the best looking version of the. I like those things. Those things are. That's a cool little tank. And they have the same. They're better than a Panzer II by every stretch of the imagination. They're reliable. I think their gun's as good as the 2-pound. I mean, the 2-pounder penetrates a little bit more, but it's more versatile. All right, we need to dry brush these. Not with black. With this. No, I like that. That's why I got this stuff for doing deep dives. And when I go back to doing the snow stuff, right now I want to get this little guy running for the weekend. But I'm probably going to have snow vehicles. And I'm probably going to do I'm going to probably do some vehicles for Winter Gewitter. I just like it too much. So I don't have any I have no Russian buildings. And not only am I going to need Russian buildings, but I'm going to need Russian summer buildings and winter buildings. Whatever. I really like doing the buildings a lot more than I would have thought I did. And they're the wife's favorite stuff for sure, because they can get into buildings. Like tanks, they all look the same. No, it's only 8:30. See, those deep dives, the good thing the deep dive does, it keeps me awake. Which, that's if I'm going to go online, I want to stay awake for you guys. And then we're going to take, where's Luftwaffe uniform? Is it this one? No, I probably already put it away, didn't I? Luftwaffe. Nope, I didn't. I moved it over. Yeah, the problem with the Chinese is there's only one person that makes figures for them. Other than that, that's like I think that's super fascinating. Although I tried watching that 800 movie and didn't get very far because it just seemed like super propaganda. Uber propaganda. But I watch war movies to see stuff in action, not to get a history lesson from it. But when I put the base color on this Italian vehicle, it looked like ass. And I'm looking at it now, I'm like, yep, that's exactly what it needs to look like. So, you can't just like be quick to judge and be like, that's not going to turn out well. Like, nope, trust the process. I don't think I've painted one vehicle that when I was done with it, I'm like, I wish I hadn't gone with that color. And it doesn't mean I get everything right. It just means that sometimes you got to fix stuff. All right, I'm going to let that be for a little bit. All right, let's go back to what were we doing? We were doing the wheels here. Yeah, I love deep dives because I'm learning stuff as I go. It's not like I'm doing a deep dive on something I don't know anything about. It's like something that interests me. But I didn't know anything about that action at Paderborn. I had no idea. I didn't know that Maurice Rose died in that either. I mean, I've heard of Maurice Rose, but I think we're going to need to get the super fine one for this. But I think what I'm going to do going forward is I'm probably going to paint and then assemble most of these 3D printed vehicles, because these prints deserve it. These prints deserve for me to spend that kind of effort on it. And it's not that much difficult. I mean, if I'm going to super glue them together anyways, you know, I'm just going to use a couple little drops of the glue anyways. I don't mind super gluing them before, you know, after I'm done painting them. I also found with a site with a bunch of fairly raw penetration data for AT weapons. I was sizing up Italian tankettes versus, well, anything above a tin can, and at 1 to 100 tabletop ranges, it's nothing. Okay. Well, at the ranges I'm fighting at, which is 200 meters and less, there's a lot of stuff that's would consider be like a bad matchup, but because the ranges are so short, it's might actually have a chance. Although I'm curious how the game handles some of that stuff before I go and tinker with it. I don't want to automatically tinker it from the get go. I want to, like, okay, take a look at it. All right, let's play it how it's supposed to be played, according to the rules. If it doesn't, I don't want to be like that one guy on the Fanaticus site that automatically is like, whenever he showed up out of nowhere, say 4 or 5 years ago, I don't think he's ever played the game like it's meant to be played. He's wanting to tinker with everything. What's his name? DPD? It's like, how many games have you played of the game before you start tinkering with it, you know? He's just one of those guys just wants to, almost like a conspiracy guy. It's like, oh, let's look for more problems. Like, dude, play the game 100 times the way it's intended. I meant 1/100 ground scale, same as Face of Battle. Well, you know, the only thing that's going to give people fits in the desert is the Matilda. Now, Matilda's going to give people fits in the desert. You're just going to have a lot of vehicles that just can't do anything with it, you know? You got that one scenario, it's called Waltzy Matilda. And it's literally like the Allies have a Matilda and one infantry squad. And the Italians are like asleep. And they've got multiple tanks and multiple squads. And almost seems like a good solitaire game or a good learning game. But it's a few too many Italians for a learning game, you know? And I'm fine making my own scenarios up. I just wanted to play some of the ones that are already set up because there's already winning conditions done by a third party, you know? Because when you get right down to it, almost every battle is slanted one way or another. And that's fine, just play it twice. It shouldn't matter who wins, you know? You're both winners. Nope, you're both losers. Someone was looking for Stevie from Fanica. Seems he suddenly stopped posting everywhere and isn't answering emails. Yeah, there's suspect that that's That guy liked to argue a lot too. Holy shit, that guy liked to argue. And like on and on and on. No, but I think Stevie's played the game correctly, but um, I do not miss having to play a game a certain way because it's played in a tournament. You know, it's different if it's like, okay, I'm playing with my game group and I want to be a dickhead and play it differently. You know, like we all agree, like, okay, this is how it should be, but we can't play it that way because then you can't do it that way in a tournament. Like, well, I'm not worried about that anymore. You know, we got access to a lot of stats. Hell, there aren't even Italians in these rules. That shouldn't be a problem. We know what the weapons are. There's a whole host of information. That one discussion, man, I still occasionally go on there, but that one discussion about a year ago where they were talking about how everybody needs to help save the environment by painting your roof tiles white. I'm like, you fucking crazy leftist! I didn't know you guys were polluting everything. You do whatever you want. We start mandating me to do something like that. You start going off on this. What do you call it? Climate change thing. You know, climate's always been changing. I don't want to get. I don't want to get into it. You know, I just give you my simple answer. I'll just give you my simple answer that both my wife and my daughter asked me the same thing. What I thought about climate change. And I said, well, you know, the Earth's always been changing. But let's get right down to the meat and potatoes. Let's assume that let's just assume that a lot of it is happening because of human activity, right? Regardless of how you feel about it, let's just assume that. Let's take this. This is a proof theory. We're gonna think about this logically, and let's say human activity, what we do on this earth, affects it adversely. And if you take that for a given, we can do everything we want in the Western world. You know, and I want to live in a place that doesn't have trash heaps and isn't trashed and isn't ugly to look at and beaches without litter and stuff like that. Like all that stuff's important to me. But if you end up handicapping yourself so badly to make the world a better place, which I don't have a problem with, but then you sub everything out. Everything is being manufactured in a part of the world where they don't give a flying shit about the environment. And you don't put any things like any restrictions like, well, we're not going to do business with people in China because they just throw pollution in the river and they're just they're ruining the earth. You know, and if you don't do that, then what good does it really do? You know, I mean, that's the reality is, you know, like if you say, okay, well, you know, we're doing all this stuff and really hindering ourselves to make the world a better place. But yet the same people are wanting to sub everything out to these places where they just do whatever the hell they want and ruin the earth and pollute and trash and everything. And, you know, then what good is it really doing? Other than, you know, making you feel good. And I'm not into about making yourself feel good, you know. So I explained to them like that's my thoughts on it. I don't want the world to turn into a trash heap, or I get upset when I see trash on the beach. Like, why is there trash on the beach? Why did you went to a concert a couple months ago, and everybody could bring their drinks and stuff, you know, like sodas and stuff, and there was a garbage can right there, and people just said fuck it, and they just threw it like in the like somebody was gonna pick up after them. Like that's not cool, man. You know. So I don't know how are we going on this thing, but you know, climate change. Oh, the guys wanting to change the world, and then guilt you into like, oh, you're a bad person if you don't want to, you know, go back to basically, you know, using horses. You know, I'm like, you must have nothing to worry about, you know. But that's the reality, you know. You could do whatever you want, but you know, if 90% of this stuff is being produced in a place where they don't give a shit, and we don't put restrictions on, like, we're not going to deal with you guys anymore because you guys are destroying the earth, then what good does it really do? So, and I can't and look, I don't really want to get into arguments and stuff on the internet, and I don't really want to sit there and type all that shit out, what I just explained, you know? So, anyhow, back to World War II, where you could just punch a Nazi and punch a commie too. Because a lot of those people that say, "Oh, I got to punch a Nazi," well, they want to hug a commie. Like, no, no, they're both assholes, all both of them. So, are you still on here, Ulf? Because if you are, I want to read something to you that I found today that I think you might find humorous, and it's relatively easy to find. And I almost, if I really was more focused on making like a show, I would probably do more of that and less of just winging it. Because there's a lot of stuff that I find that's really interesting, just World War II related. Like, maybe shit you didn't know about the Second World War that I just like stumble across. Like, I'm not looking for this. And it's just stuff that I had no idea of it. And I think it's like fascinating stuff. But if you're not here, don't speak up. But imagine you're not on, 'cause, man, it's late as shit for you, man. You're still here. Your week off work is also Nate's night galore. Okay, I'm going to read you something. I think you'll appreciate this. And this is when I was looking about Maurice Rose, okay? Who, I don't know if you were here at the very beginning, but I'm reading this book called, or listening to this book called Spearhead. And it's about the 3rd Armored Division and a couple of characters in there. One of them is the gunner on the Pershing that was the first one to take the Pershing into action and stuff like that. And I get to this place where they're encircling the Ruhr Valley, 2nd Armored from the north and 3rd from the south. I believe it's 3rd from the south. Yeah, I think they're coming up from the south. And their lead column gets ambushed, and the commanding general of the 3rd Armored Division, Maurice Rose, was killed. And I didn't know that. I'm reading this, and I listen to this, I'm like, they fucking killed him? I mean, like, that's kind of unusual to have like a major general die. I think that's what he was. He was a major general. So I ended up looking at Wikipedia, which, people say has a lot of crap in it, but I don't know. There's a lot of interesting information on there that could lead you and learn about real stuff. But if you look up Maurice Rose, okay, he was the highest ranking American killed by enemy fire in the Second World War in the European theater of operations. So I clicked on highest ranking enemy killed by enemy fire, and there was a list of U.S. general officers and flag officers killed in World War II. Okay, and one guy really stood out because of his unusual name. Okay, and there's this one guy called Simon Bolivar Buckner Jr. I'm like, okay, what's the deal with this guy? Because, like, this is some Anglo dude. Why are you naming him Simon Bolivar Buckner, right? Like, who is this guy? And it's almost like I've heard about this guy before. So he was a lieutenant general in the United States Army. Obviously, he passed away. He was killed in action. Otherwise, he wouldn't be on this list. Who served in the Pacific Theater. As commanding general of the Alaska Defense Command, Buckner commanded American-Canadian forces in the Aleutian Islands campaign, including the Battle of Attu and the Kiska Expedition. Well, I've heard of both of those things. Following that assignment, he was promoted to the command of the 10th Army, which conducted the amphibious invasion of the Japanese island of Okinawa in 1945. He was killed during the closing days of the Battle of Okinawa by enemy artillery fire, making him one of the highest ranking United States military officers lost to enemy fire during World War II. Okay? He's from. Buckner was the son of Confederate General Simon Bolivar Buckner. So there was a Confederate general with that name? I mean, that's kind of unusual. You are familiar with him. Okay. I wasn't familiar with him at all. All right, so let me skip to the part that I thought that was really interesting about him. Military career, War College, yada yada yada. Was given command of 66th Infantry Light Tank at Fort Meade. Well, shit, I could end up finding more interesting things that wasn't even the stuff that I was talking about. He was promoted to Major General in August 41. He became known as a hard, tough leader, sleeping under a single sheet no matter how cold it was, and denying his men the use of underarm deodorants, declaring that a man should smell like a man. I didn't know that. That's not what I was bringing up. I would not want to serve under him. I actually didn't know they used deodorant in World War II. Oh, it's a good thing that they did. Um, Alaskan waters, including areas along the Aleutian Islands and into the Bering Sea coastline, had previously been reconnoitered by Imperial Japanese naval vessels in the 1930s. The potential for some kind of action was considered seriously by both U.S. and Canadian forces. When the U.S. was finally drawn into World War II, the defense of Alaska had already been underway, but no one knew where, when, or how the Japanese would attack. It came in a stunning surprise attack on Dutch Harbor, 3rd and 5th of June 1942, which is the same time Midway happened, basically. Farther west, Imperial Japanese forces seized the islands Kiska and Attu, bringing ashore some 7,000 troops at Kiska, nearly 3,000 at Attu. Bombardment of a thing. Okay. Here's where it gets interesting. Buckner gave orders in June 1942 for the indigenous Aleutian people. I'm going to read some stuff, and you guys better not get some thin skin, okay? I didn't write the stuff down. I'm just reading the article, and I was kind of surprised reading it. Buckner gave orders in June 1942 for the indigenous Aleut people to be evacuated and for their villages to be burned. The Aleut people were not allowed to return until 1945, after the war was over. Buckner furthermore objected to the deployment of African American troops in Alaska, writing to his superiors of his concern that they would remain after the war, with the natural result that they would interbreed with the Indians and the Eskimos and produce, and I quote, an astonishingly objectable race of mongrels, which would be a problem. I was like, wow. Wow. I couldn't believe that. I was like, that's pretty extreme. Mongrels, huh? I'm gonna have to start calling people mongrels I don't like. That's just such an old school word that I never really thought about. No, don't bring any blacks up here. They'll create a race of mongrels. Wow. Anyhow, I never heard of the guy. You know, I guess once a Confederate general, always a Confederate general, right? Okay, we got all the little rubbers there. We got all the little rubbers here. Anything else that needs to be black on here? Is I want to blackwash this bitch. Blackline this bitch. Although the weathering's next. Damn it. Let's make sure I get the right colors here. We don't want to fuck this up. British uniform. Green ochre. We already have green ochre. So I'm just going to highlight with dark sand. We're going to go really light. Yeah, I was reading that this morning. I'm like, what? What the what? Now we gotta give this a good cleaning. But I guess I should watch that Rogue Heroes now that I got some special air service guys. Yeah, that could be some guys that get 3 action tokens. That could be pretty nasty. Raid on Rommel. I got a Rommel figure. Doesn't really look like him though. I don't mean one of the ones that's in the Airfix or the Matchbox one. I'm talking about like I think it's a company called Audemars, and they basically make like a bunch of German generals, and I don't know why they don't do other generals, you know. But you know how it is. Some people got this fetish for all things German. Oh, I'm stupid. I know. Tell you something you don't already know. I need to do tracks. Well, fuck it. Let me do the front here. I wanted to see what this looked like because this ends up going over the tracks. Actually, I'm gonna have to hand paint these markings first. We can do a little bit of weathering over them. After, let me just go ahead and do everything. I'll go over the tracks. I'm getting thirsty painting this thing. I don't mean the new thirsty. The Utes gotta mess everything up, don't they? You said it's your night. It's your week off from work, huh? A whole week. Yeah, I love those deep dives, man. That's how you learn stuff. All right. All right. Let's get good old track color. Oh, that's not it. Oh, let's get it. Oh, that's not it. Might already be out here. I can't see that far away. I need to get the glasses out. There it is. German camo black. I'm gonna do desert stuff before I could do SS stuff. I don't have a problem with that. The only reason I even want to do SS stuff is just the challenge of doing their camouflage. I mean, if you don't agree the SS camouflage is pretty cool, that's it. I don't like anything else about them, you know? I certainly don't like the ridiculous, rank structure. Toilet bowl Führer and. Take me to the toilet bowl Führer. Nazi stooge. Yeah, but not gluing this together just makes it a lot quicker to paint the other side. So that's why I decided to do that with the Panzer Jaeger 1. Just really for speed, not because I can't get in there. I gotta use a little boy's room. I'll be right back. Okay. I'm really gonna like the way it turns out. The only thing I would do different is I think that I don't know if I'd do something different. We got more of these to do. If this works out, I'm gonna need at least three more. So like that faint little modeling it has. So let's talk about this weapon system within the framework of the game that I play. And I'm pretty excited to see how vehicles get handled in the face of battle. I've read how they behave, but it's not 2020 until you play it. But if you take something like this Panzerjäger one, it's a three-man crew, right? You got a driver slash radio operator. He's one guy. You got a loader, who's another guy, and then the tank commander slash gunner is the other thing. So the tank commander slash gunner is probably going to have, he'll have two actions. Plus, he's going to have another action as a low rank commander. Training ability. He's going to have like one action, which he can't use on himself. He can only use it on the loader or the driver. So when the actual action token for the commander slash gunner comes up, most of the time he's going to be firing. That's what he's going to do. And once he fires that gun, he's not going to be able to fire again until the loader has reloaded. So what you don't want is for his chit to come up a second time. You're like, well, I can't fire again because the loader hesitated a little bit. But if his command comes up, it's an opportunity for him to tell the loader to get his act together and load another round in there. Of course, if the loader comes up afterwards, after that, before his own action, he can't fire it again. The loader still hesitates. So it's going to be an interesting kind of little situation there. Whereas if you had a commander that was literally, that's what he was doing. If you had a gunner and you had a loader and you have a commander, the commander's only role is to be the commander. When his action token comes up, he could tell either the gunner or the loader to do whatever action is available at that time. Like if you've got the round chambered, you could tell, hey, to go ahead and fire it to improve your chances of getting out a subsequent round. So it's going to be interesting. It's also going to be interesting how long or how little amount of time it's going to take for a really fast vehicle to cover the length of the battlefield. Because I have a feeling that BT can go pretty damn far every turn. It might be a situation where the Panzerjäger only gets off 3 rounds. Or maybe less. So, I honestly don't know. Gets off 3 rounds before it gets rammed. and the back tracks. Now, the thing is, while painting this up, I have encountered other little spider webs that I wasn't necessarily aware of. You know, if there's only one thing I don't like about the 3D prints, is that some of them have a lot of cleanup. Well, it's easy cleanup. It's just time consuming. That's it. So, not really a big deal. And of course, this is a piece of spare track also here in the middle. And I bet those are going to be all rusty because they sure look like mufflers to me. Part of the exhaust system. All right. I actually enjoy this part a lot. Because I noticed that it makes a difference. If it didn't make a difference, I probably wouldn't enjoy it. Ah, Snapdragon. Just realized that the rubber on these idler wheels on the back, the return rollers, is not painted. But that Desert Armor book actually has a lot of detail in it. I was just kind of looking at some excerpts, and it was talking about what kind of Italian trucks they were using in a situation. Like, wow, I was like, I'm surprised they would have gone through, the singling out, Lancia 3RO trucks. Like, that's a good sign. So now this has a 37 millimeter cannon, as opposed to the 47 that's in the M1340. It has a 37 millimeter cannon, and it's in a casement, and then a twin machine gun in a turret. So I suspect that there is a gunner and a loader in there, plus a driver, and then the commander. I believe is a four-man turret, four-man crew. That's what I would think. I'm really gonna enjoy doing Italian vehicles. This print is superb. This print is really really good. I'm just taking steps so you guys can see them all. But all these riveted vehicles take a while to do because you got to put the stuff around every rivet. You don't have to. I choose to. Trutark. Missed your Sunday and Monday streams. My internet decided to take a shit. Yeah, yeah, it happens to me too. It's not on you, you know. I'm basically my internet here is a mobile connection through T-Mobile, and it's pretty rock solid all the time. And there'd be sometimes like, hey, you keep buffering. I'm like, dude, I'm not doing anything different. It happens, man. How are you? Just working on an eye tie right here. Hey, what's the matter, you? Technology is great when it works. When it doesn't work, it's frustrating as shit. Tired. I had to work overtime this week, which I better enjoy because it'll be short hours from here on out. What industry do you work in? You can be vague. You're a warehouse jockey and drive a flatbed as a side gig when I get clients. Ah, getting ready to slow down before you're working, huh? I work in a construction supply related field. I'll leave it at that. And yeah, we got a lot of work, but like people sometimes hard taking stuff. Like, well, we got to wait for the election. Like, what difference is it going to make? Either you're going to build this or you're not going to build it. Warehouse jockey. Yeah, yeah.
does not matter who wins the election. The economy has had a lot of underlying issues for a while, and those chickens have come home to roost.
Well, I could use a little bit of a slowdown, to be honest with you. I'm just a little tired of fixing everybody else's problems, but shit, that's been going on for 30 fucking years. Yeah, it doesn't matter who wins, but we hear that excuse. My wife hears that. Oh, we're just waiting to see what the. What are you gonna? What difference does it make?
I'm not gonna slow down either. It's just that I like the gravy train while it's rolling.
No, we didn't slow a bit down during the whole COVID debacle, and it was really annoying that you get off work and you're busting your ass, and everybody's been sitting on their lily in their pajamas at home. Doesn't really make me very sympathetic to their cause. So, damn, that looks good.
Which is why eventually I want to own my own business, there have my own schedule, and not behold anyone else. I officially own my truck. After next year, will only have to keep up with my B class from then on.
Yeah, I don't want to have my own business. 'Cause I don't think about work when I'm not there. And I'd be on the news if I did. The biggest reason I don't game with the local guys is because of work. It's like I'm like overworked, and everybody I game with, it's either their day off or they're retired, and I'm like, I'm basically jumping through a flaming hoop to make things easy for you guys. Like I'm not gonna do that anymore. You know, I'm like screws up my whole week, and like no, I don't need to game with people that badly to fuck up my. Now, if I was retired, it'd be different, but maybe one day. I know I'm not going to be one of those people. It's like, man, I got to work to stay busy. Not this guy. We'll do this fucking show 24/7. I mean, shit, I go to lunch, come back, and things are fucked up. Like, man, you guys can't even cover, like, that stuff. You can't make decisions, you know?
410s, I have a 3-day weekend. Sign me up.
Yep, I'd rather have a 4-day weekend, too. But, you know, I'd rather just not have to work on weekends, which I've been pretty fortunate so far. I sense a disturbance in the force, though. Oh, yeah. I was surprised that using the Tamiya one, the Tamiya liner, it's not any darker. I'm like, well, then what's wrong with this one? I mean, the normal, if it has one problem, it's that, you know, sometimes you have to go over an area multiple times to get the right thickness that you want it to have. But that's also kind of a safety measure. You know, you're not like, oh shit, I went too far, you know?
See, you just like Russian tanks and not the communism.
Yeah, I don't like any dictators of any kind. You know, starting a conversation around the point. Yeah, well, you know, I don't know if you've heard me say, you know, 410s, working 410s was created, you know, TGIF was created by some bastard that worked 410s. I think Fridays are the hardest day of the week. Nobody wants to work. You still got to get stuff done. You're worn out, etc. I don't like Fridays. Maybe after I'm done with work on a Friday, but then I'm worn out. I'm old school when nobody liked communism. There was no redeeming value of communism when I grew up. None of it. My dad actually fled from a communist country. So, yeah, you're not going to see me no value in that. Well, I need to find out if this is a exhaust. I'd put money on it that it is. Man, this has a lot of little things to hit. But that's also why it makes it a good model. Model miniature.
Do you think we'll see the return of the tankettes in the age of drones?
I don't know. Drones ruin everything. Drones are like drones to now, and I mean ruin everything from the standpoint of like I don't even want to hear about them. The same way that the aircraft carrier ruined surface combat, drones ruin land combat. Like, I'm not interested in doing anything with drones. Anything that's war game related, or they have that kind of stuff. You got some nerd burglar back there, like with a joystick, you know. Yeah, I'm not up to date with warfare these days. You know, when that whole Ukraine thing happened, I was like glued to the TV, and then it's like they did that one situation with that Snake Island, like, you know, that whole like almost like that Battle of the Bulge thing, where it's like we want you to surrender, and nuts, we're not going to do that, right? That everybody was going to needed to surrender on that island. Or they were going to kill them. And then, you know, supposedly told them to go, you know, they fly a kite up their ass sideways, right? And then you hear that, oh, the Russians killed everybody on the island. And then a week later, you find out they really didn't do that. That's when I stopped paying attention to the Ukraine. So I don't even know if it's still going on. Don't care. I'm not going to worry about, you know, being manipulated by the media. And I mean that by any media. You know, just tell me the fucking news, you know? Nerd burglar alert. Ooga. So I don't watch the news at all. Happier that way. It's the red light special. Nerd burglar alert. Ooga.
You prefer Cold War over any other era when it comes to wargaming in general, do you?
What particular part of the Cold War? Because M1s ruin everything. You can't use M1s in a war game. I always thought it would be cool to do something like at the end of Eisenhower, at the beginning of Kennedy, right? So you're talking about like a 1960 type scenario. So you've got like, you know, U.S. forces in Europe have light tanks, medium tanks, and heavy tanks, M103s, and I guess it would be what? Walker Bulldogs, Pattons in the middle, and M103s. I think that would be pretty cool, you know? But I can't be into everything. You know, the Soviets were a decent enemy. I mean, they're not as good as the Germans. I mean, the World War II Germans is like a great enemy, like a perfect enemy.
Mid to late Cold War area, 60s to 80s.
You know what vehicle? Actually, there's lots of vehicles I like about the Cold War. The Chieftain. I think the Chieftain is a really cool looking vehicle. But what I don't like about Cold War is all the NATO tanks pretty much have the same paint scheme. If you're talking about the time period I grew up in, 80s and 90s, they got that three color U.S. and Bundeswehr type thing, and it's just honestly kind of boring. Chieftains at least have the dark black, the black and the dark green.
Comes to naval warfare, like 80s when Soviet submarines start becoming a real problem. Of course, the beautiful Kirov.
They are beautiful. They're absolutely beautiful. I don't like modern naval stuff. I don't like the past the horizon thing. Although I do have a set of rules for it, and I do have some fleets for them. Don't make me go down that the slippery slope of I'm finding where they're at. But I've got some Chinese and Japanese 1/6000 scale ships, and they sound really small, and they are really small. But man, they look good. They look good for as small as they are. And I've got that shipwreck for a set of rules. I really haven't messed with it because it's not. I can't be into everything. So, I mean, if I want to do World War II stuff, let's do World War II stuff. I can't be involved in too many things, or I won't get anything accomplished.
I know me. A friend and I have been working on a Cold War naval game for quite some time. Then he lost his eyesight and lost interest.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't need to lose my eyesight anymore. Yeah, missiles take the fun out of it, and they're really accurate to hit. So things can be really inaccurate, and then you're like bored, and then they can be really accurate, where it's like, oh, let's just launch everything at the first sign of encountering the enemy and hope for the best. Man, this thing has a lot of rivets. See if I can snap up a picture of these things to show you guys. Really happy with the way that's looking.
I think we got the missiles, defense, countermeasures, mechanics down. We're just not good on the turn sequence. I wanted something alternating. He wanted traditional. I go, you go.
Sounds riveting. Exactly. Exactly. Well, that's what I call it being into ships, a rivet counter. As opposed to a tread head. That's armor. Okay, I'm actually going to stop for the evening. So, yeah, it does look good. And actually, I don't know whether you believe this or not, but it's actually relaxing. You know? It's, you know. And there's a lot of tanks that I like that have rivets. You know, the Hagos and stuff like that. Those little Japanese bastards. Those have a lot of detail. But anyways, we'll pick this up tomorrow or the next day or what have you. But it's looking pretty good. Looking pretty good. You know, and my game is really anal retentive, so it's not like, okay, odd or even the thing dies. Like there's stuff involved in it. So anyhow, thanks for stopping by. You should be off Friday. Okay? I won't be. But anyways, enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you guys on the flip side.